Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Business Daily. Coming to you live from Seoul, I'm Lee Ji-yoon. We have plenty lined up for you today, so let's get started with the day's highlights. The European Central Bank cuts interest rates and expands its asset purchasing program, pulling out all the stops to push up growth. How will these moves affect the Korean economy? Japan marks the 5th anniversary of the devastating earthquake and tsunami that shook the country. Also in review is Abenomics and its effects. These stories and more coming right up. Some aggressive measures were put out by the European Central Bank on Thursday as it went ahead to cut all 3 of its interest rates and expanded buying to prop up the Eurozone economy. Our Park Jong-hong starts us off.
The stimulus measures were all out and comprehensive. For the first time, the European Central Bank has paved the way for a zero interest rate era by cutting the key lending rate to zero from 0.05%. Also, it pushed the deposit rate further into negative territory to minus 0.4%, a cut of 10 basis points, and the lending facility rate was cut to 0.25% from 0.3%.
The Governing Council expects the key ECB interest rates to remain at present or lower levels for an extended period of time and well past the horizon of our net asset purchases.
The measures are hoped to boost the flagging Eurozone economy, especially by helping to lift inflation in the Eurozone. Inflation has remained lower than the central bank target of 2% for 3 years running. In addition to the rate cuts, the ECB added it would expand its bond buying stimulus program by raising monthly purchases to 80 billion euros from the current 60 billion, and that it will also include purchases of corporate bonds. The host of measures deemed more radical than investors had expected were the latest in the ECB's quantitative easing program that began a year ago.
Well, the decision of the ECB is a surprise for the entire market. It's beyond expectation, and that's why the market goes up naturally. But on the other hand, the people who are concerned about a possible exit and possible bubbles which might develop are bigger and bigger, and they rise.
As for the day's trading, European markets fell across the board after a brief rally during the day. The FTSE 100 in London closed lower by nearly 1.8%, while the DAX in Frankfurt seemingly bore the brunt of the ECB's initiatives, plunging more than 2.3%. Park Jong-hong, Business Daily.
So what will Mario Draghi's new policies entail, and how are they expected to play out? For more on that, we go live to our Hwang Jae joining us from the News Center. So Jiha, the ECB rolled out what looks to be a comprehensive stimulus package to prop up the sagging economy. And how did markets react to this?
June, interestingly, the easing measures did not actually result in what the policymakers might have intended, with markets overall reacting negatively. The euro strengthened after a brief plunge while stocks were down. This in many ways mirrors the concerns that people have had about Japan and the lack of progress seen there, with the yen gaining and jitters re-entering the market. So people now seem to be more concerned about the side effects that negative rates might bring to the economy, especially since the effectiveness of these policies have not yet been proven.
Now, what kind of side effects are we talking about here?
Well, analysts are citing worsening profitability of the Eurozone's banking sector, and with steeper cuts from the ECB, fears are mounting that the stimulus plans will further heighten uncertainty, also taking a toll on Korea's financial markets.
The fiscal soundness of European banks is deteriorating because loan deposit margins are falling due to negative rates, while economic conditions remain sluggish despite quantitative easing. This is resulting in bad debt, so concerns are growing that a financial crisis might be prompted by financial institutions.
And because monetary easing also results in cheaper currency, theoretically, experts also worry about the Eurozone's latest move exacerbating the trend of global monetary easing, which many have called a zero-sum game.
But if that so-called currency war is already underway, with a handful of central banks already holding negative rates, that's got to be adding more pressure on Korea.
Yes, of course, and that is what many market analysts point to when they say Korea's central bank should cut the key rate even further to prop up lackluster growth momentum. The key interest rate currently stands at a record low of 1.5% after the BOK left it unchanged for the 9th straight month just yesterday.
Although major economies are denying that they're engaging in this currency war, the controversy continues. Since Korea's exports are still sagging, the need for more easing is on the rise because people worry the lack of policy measures will further challenge recovery.
In fact, some major economic indicators in Korea are showing signs of a greater slowdown. We've been talking about how exports have dropped for the 14th straight month in February here in Korea, while consumer sentiment remains dull. Just to point out one indicator, the operation rate of the manufacturing sector stood at almost the same level seen during the height of the global financial crisis in 2009.
So would the ECB's latest move provide any kind of indicator for future decisions when it comes to monetary policies from the Bank of Korea?
Yes, it will, and experts say, but experts say an additional rate cut here in Korea is likely only if economic figures show signs of further worsening heading towards year-end. This especially after the top central banker emphasized that the situation in major economies like Europe and Japan is different from what we see here in Korea.
Those countries introducing negative interest rates are worried about deflation and the economic conditions are close to recession levels. There are also countries that hold key currencies, so it's hard to agree with the opinion that Korea should also join the club.
So what policymakers and economists say is that we'll really have to see how the ECB's new policies unfold, and that in turn would provide us with a clearer picture on where Korea's monetary policy will head in the coming months.
All right, thanks for that report, Jihae. The wait is over. Samsung's latest Galaxy range smartphones hit the shelves across Korea this morning. And Samsung is confident that its Galaxy S7 and S7 Edge will break past sales records as the company focused a lot on adding as many features as possible. Our Kim Min-ji has more.
Will Samsung's latest smartphones be able to turn tables in the much saturated smartphone market? After being unveiled to the public last month, the Galaxy S7 and S7 Edge were launched in some 50 countries worldwide on Friday, including its home turf. You can pick up a 32GB Galaxy S7 for $690 in Korea and the S7 Edge for $770, both slightly cheaper than their predecessors. Samsung says they focused on addressing consumers' wants and needs.
Our aim in making the S7 and S7 Edge was to make them much more valuable and comprehensive than other conventional smartphones. We tried to incorporate in the latest models the innovations that consumers wanted in a phone.
So what can we look out for in the latest models? The glass and metal encased smartphones come with batteries that last a lot longer, water and dust resistance, not to mention some of the popular features from the previous S6 model. Samsung has also adopted a dual pixel sensor for the cameras for the first time in smartphone history, which will enhance photo quality to levels of high-end cameras, and has brought back the micro SD card slot for increased memory capacity. With that, the tech giant says it's confident that the sales of the Galaxy S7 will surpass that of the previous S6, which sold about 38 million units last year. But with Samsung's local rival LG Electronics soon to launch its new G5, the industry's first modular-type smartphone, which can connect with various accessories to improve sound and enhance camera functions, the world's biggest smartphone maker is in for a tough challenge.
The design's not very different from its previous model, and rather than focus on innovation, it's more like being faithful to the basics. Rather, it's the new LG smartphone that's under the spotlight. The modular smartphone is likely to create a market sensation.
While analysts say the release of the latest models may bring a slight uptick in profits in Samsung's mobile division, they don't have major game-changing aspects that will win over consumers. Kim Min-ji, Business Daily.
It's Friday, and that means it's time for a look through some of the global business stories that made headlines this week. And for that, we're now joined by our Eunice Kim in the studio. Welcome, Eunice.
Thank you, June.
All right, so today is March 11th, and it marks the somber anniversary in Japan.
Indeed.
As it's been 5 years since that triple disaster, a tsunami, an earthquake, and a nuclear meltdown hit northeastern Japan.
Right.
And I heard that you got to look at where things stand now.
Yeah, so this 5-year mark also marks the halfway point for the Japanese government to rebuild. They have a 10-year reconstruction plan for that part of the country. And in Fukushima, external cleanup has been done. Overall, radiation levels are down, and some 1,500 spent fuel rods were successfully removed. But the hard work is still very much ahead. Take a look.
Nearly 60% of Fukushima residents have yet to return home, and many of them never will. 43-year-old Takayaki Ueno is not one of them. 5 years after the magnitude 9.0 earthquake triggered colossal waves up to 40 meters high, making ghost towns out of what were thriving communities, Ueno still resides nearby, clinging onto hopes of finding his father and then toddler son, Kotaro.
I am a parent, and the biggest duty of a parent is to protect children. I was unable to do this, so I think that I am the worst parent ever. I have to apologize to my children for this.
People searching for their families in high exclusion zones can do so for up to 5-hour stretches, 30 times a year, for fear of radiation poisoning. Leveled radiation rates is one of the few victories that can be claimed near the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant, though not within it. Even specially designed robots to map out the plant's core, where the melted fuel rods are believed to be, have died en route due to the strong radiation. Scientists have said they're looking for proper technology.
It is kind of difficult to say how much we have achieved in terms of percentage. Thinking of the project in mountain climbing terms, if the peak is the 10th station, then we have probably just passed the first station.
The decommissioning project is expected to take decades, some say 40 years, and nobody really knows what the true cost will be at the end of it. Also unclear is the future of nuclear power for Japan. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has been clear he wants to resurrect it, and reactors have been slowly coming back online. But a survey by the newspaper Mainichi Shimbun over the weekend found that more than half polled were against restarting the plants, an opinion a local court surprisingly sided with this week as it issued an injunction to stop operations at 2 reactors in Takahama, the first of which had just restarted in January after passing national security standards.
I'm happy. As a resident of Fukushima, I'm extremely happy that is the first halt of a nuclear plant as other nuclear plants resume operating even though the Fukushima nuclear crisis has not been resolved. I'm so grateful they have understood us.
So the tug of war continues over Japan's energy plans, future energy plans. But do we know what percentage of power is now produced from those nuclear plants?
We do, in fact. 5 years ago, March 11th, before that date, 30% of Japan's electricity was in fact generated by nuclear power. But now that percentage has fallen dramatically to 1.7% and could fall further since the Takahama reactors were ordered to shut down immediately. Now, that court order did cause share prices of Japan's power utilities to plummet to a 16-month low this week, as it does become unclear how Japan will account for its electricity velocity down the road.
Yeah, no doubt that this had an impact on the Japanese economy as a whole. But pulling back a little bit, I heard that this comes as Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's economic policy came under fire again.
That's right. So Abenomics is what it's called, right? And it's been under fire throughout the year, last year as well, for failing to turn around its decades-long economic slump. And Abenomics was criticized once again on Monday this week, this time by an opposition lawmaker that put the Prime Minister himself on the defensive.
First of all, you assume Abenomics has failed, but it hasn't failed. As long as there aren't major events like the Lehman shock or a huge disaster, we will raise the sales tax as planned. We aren't thinking of disbanding either.
And that doubt doesn't stop at Parliament either. The Nikkei newspaper said its survey that ran at the end of last month showed for the first time half of those polled said they did not approve of Abenomics. And the part of the policy that's receiving the most criticism is not the aggressive monetary policy, which of course is now down to negative interest rates or government spending. But it is at the structural level, those bold reforms like those in the job market and getting more women into management level positions. These are areas that economists want to see more progress. And with Prime Minister Abe's immediate term only to run through the end of next year, time is ticking.
And those reforms sound familiar. I mean, those are the reforms that Korea is also trying to implement, right?
You're right.
All right. Thank you so much for coming in today, Eunice.
You bet.
And that wraps it up for today and this week. Thanks so much for staying with us throughout the program. We'll be back next week with more at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. Have a great weekend.